Yeah, that's it. Hey, hey. So now we are talking to Jorge Luz on Akira Kurasawa's masterpieces. Um, this is our chance to discuss something little different from the stereotype of the Japan culture. So much into anime, manga, and dorama. We have more of the Japan culture than that. And we have our guest today, my former Japanese student, Jorge Luz, who is a 3D professional artist and designer. So, welcome to our journalistic program, Jorge.
Thank you very much.
So, please tell us why do you have this experience, this passion on Kurosawa's work, and also, of course, introduce yourself a little more, uh, telling us about your your life, your work in what, of course, is related to our subject today, that is Akira Kurosawa's work and art.
So, as I said, I'm Jorge. I'm a 3D artist. I have done 3D work for animated movies. I have made 3D work for TV shows. I did also some small work for stuff like games and augmented reality, that kind of stuff. So, I'm an artist, and like all artists, to be an artist, you have to consume a lot of art. Um, when I was around 10 years old, my parents got divorced, and because of that, I started to spend a lot of more time with my dad than I used to before. And my dad thought it was a great idea at the time to introduce me to a lot of the stuff that he was into, because we're spending so much more time together. And he started, mostly introducing me to stuff that he enjoyed when he was younger. So a lot of like some of like comic books that he enjoyed, in most obviously movies. And so he started introducing me to a lot of movies that, like, as a child, as a 10-year old in the you know late 90s, there were like old stuff that I would not normally have naturally stumbled on. So he introduced me to a lot of old movies, and with good success and not so great success on a lot of stuff. When you are a 10-year old, I don't think there's any 10-year old that's ready to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. But I did enjoy watching Kurosawa movies, because they had samurai, and they were like fighting, slashing each other. And I think that was much easier for me to learn how to appreciate as a kid. And then as I grew older, he would introduce me to more and more of his movies. He would buy his movies on DVD, and we would watch them together. So that's how I got like a lot of access to his movies.
Nice. So, well, um, my first impression of Kurosawa's masterpieces, or at least one of his works, I don't remember now. The only piece I've watched for now, many years ago, maybe the name was something like Hero or Hero, I don't know, something like that. Um, Something I could find. I don't remember when and what, but and also you can help us how to find these works, yeah, because usually today everything we watch on YouTube, sorry, yeah, YouTube also, but also on Netflix, yeah, at least for me, almost everything I watch, be it American production, Japanese production, anime, or other things, I watch everything almost by Netflix, yeah. um, so our television today, yeah. So you could help us. How could we today find and watch Kurosawa's work?
So that's a little bit hard. Like I have some of his movies because when my dad moved out of my childhood home late last year, and he called me home and said like, "Is there anything you want to take from the home? You know, otherwise I'm just gonna throw stuff out." You know, one of the very few things that I kept was his Akira Kurasawa DVD collection. Um, yeah, it's kind of hard because they're not mainstream movies. They're not like Avengers movies, so it's not the kind of stuff that you're gonna find easily on Netflix. I maybe you can find them on maybe like Japanese Netflix. So if you have like a VPN or something that you can change your location to try to use it, maybe that works. Um, I think that you can find some of this stuff on like Mubi, which is a streaming service for more like cult movies and stuff like that. I think they have some of the stuff there. So otherwise, you can try to find. You know, I'm pretty sure they still sell like Blu-ray sets or anything, but it can be a little bit hard. I think I when I was doing some research for this, I actually did find a couple of his movies on YouTube that you can watch.
Maybe people can
I think I
find
saw
it.
Dreams there.
Maybe people can find it even on YouTube. Maybe some of the movies they are rented in YouTube. Yeah, maybe you can pay a little and fee and watch on YouTube the whole version.
Yeah, it's not too expensive. I mean, it's cheaper than going to a movie theater.
Oh, fine, good. Yeah, I think once I could not find any movie elsewhere, and so I opted to watch, paying a little fee to YouTube to watch a whole version of a movie I liked to see. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's a possibility, maybe. Yeah, good.
yeah,
So of course, people may try the illegal way, but we don't want to promote illegal
yeah.
ways. Yeah, good. Uh, yeah. Uh, so yeah, I don't remember now the movie I watched just once, long time ago, but I it seemed to me a little boring to be true, to be honest. Um, Everything's so slow, and even for you, maybe you were a teenager in the time you first uh, knew this kind of movies by Kurosawa. This wasn't like boring and too much slow for you. What do you thought about it?
So somewhere, some of his stuff was slow for me. That's why, especially early on, I was more into like the samurai stuff because they would feature samurai fights, and it's interesting to say because if compared to other movies from the time, other black and white movies and movies from like the 50s and everything, they're not as slow as a lot of the other movies are from the time. Because one thing that is like a signature of Kurosawa, he was very much about showing motion in the movies. So his camera movements are always very dynamic. He always has movement on the screen. Even if a guy is just standing there being sad, he's gonna be standing there sad in the rain. So there's gonna be rain and thunder or something like that. He really enjoyed showing motion. You would have like a samurai just walking a road, and there would be like dust and wind blasting and everything because he really liked the idea of using especially the weather and the environment movement to convey the emotion that the character was going through. So like I said, he also like really liked moving the camera. Like nowadays, that's actually a bit of a problem with modern movies. They like cameras move too much, but at the time, he was really good at moving the camera, and he was. That's the big difference. You can have a moving camera if you have a purpose in it. Like his camera movements, they even kind of tell a story. They have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. So he tells what's going on, and then from one cut, it flows into the movement of the next cut and stuff like that. So he was really, really good at that.
Nice. By the way, if possible, could you adjust a little more your camera so appears more of your head, like without the empty space above you, maybe to enjoy more the space. Talking about camera,
Yeah.
if
Higher?
possible. I don't know. Yeah, if you're because we are not enjoying the space in your video. Um, if maybe your camera could be a little down, it's better.
Oh,
Um,
this?
let's see. Go back to your position. Yeah, I think it's better now. Yeah, so you
Okay.
can enjoy better your image. Very well. Okay, good. So, um, well, I took a look on some of the pictures promoting Kurosawa's movies, Rashomon, um, Kagemushi, Seven Samurais, and so on. And well, it looks like all of them um, talks about old times. Yeah, we know that Kurosawa's age was along last century. Yeah, like 1950s. Yeah, 1970s, something like that. But he was showing us the old Japan. Yeah, like the typical even today samurai Japan. Yeah, that is no more. Yeah. Um, so, what do you think about it?
So the thing, not all of his movies are like that. So he is mostly known for his uh, Jidaigeki, which is the period pieces movies. That's how they're called. And if you heard the word Jidaigeki, uh, Jidai, when George Lucas was a big fan of his movies, so he heard the word Jedi and he turned that into Jedi from Star Wars.
Oh,
Yeah, that's where Jedi from Star Wars come from, because he loved Kurosawa and his movies were Jedi Geki.
whoa, yeah.
And
I thought that Jedi just for the Japanese word for era, yeah, epoch, yeah. But
yeah,
maybe this was also an inspiration for George Lucas created his Jedi warriors.
yep, yeah. Especially the movie the Hidden Fortress was a big inspiration for him. Uh, Darth Vader, his helmet is supposed to look a little bit like a samurai helmet. If you look at the
Whoa! I've never
yeah,
thought about that before.
yeah, if you look for like the original uh, concept art for Star Wars by what's the name of the guy? Uh, uh, Half McQuarrie. Half McQuarrie was the artist that did the concept art for Star Wars. And if you look like the very early concept art for Darth Vader, he looks like a samurai. He looks so much like a samurai. So that was very very intentional. Uh, but I was saying like not every single one of his movies
Yeah,
were
but
bad.
I need to say that I no way I imagined before that Star Wars that I loved so much since
Yeah,
so long were has something on Japanese culture on that.
yeah. I
Of
mean,
course, we know that
but
on swords, okay, but we have swords also in Europe, yeah, Europe history,
yeah.
but
But yeah, I think probably like at least half of his movies were Jidaigeki, so it's pretty fair to say that that was his main thing. Uh, to that, you have to actually think a little bit about who Kurosawa was and how his origin. Uh, he was born in Tokyo in 1910 from the Kurosawa clan, which was a minor samurai clan.
wow.
So his family, he came from a family of samurai, not a big like clan or anything, but he still had like a bit of that with him. So he grew up in a fairly wealthy family because of that. Even though like the time of the samurai was long gone, samurai families still had like a big influence. And he was lucky that he was the youngest of, I think, like 8 or 9 kids. So he didn't have to worry too much about the whole, you know I have to be, the future head of the family or anything like that. And because of that, he was allowed to explore a lot of this stuff, like artistic endeavors. Apparently his father was a guy that like really promoted that. He incentivized him to go to the movies and see, and learn how to paint and stuff like that. He originally wanted to be a painter, not a filmmaker, but he eventually decided to become a filmmaker. And
Well,
so
I did
he,
not. I also did not know that he actually wanted to be a painter.
yeah, yeah, he wanted to be a painter.
And,
There
and
was
why he
this.
why he changed the idea of job to be a movie artist?
I'm not entirely sure. I didn't read that much into it, but from what I hear, I think he was a little bit disillusioned with the art community or something like that.
Mm.
Um, but when he was in 1923, when he was 13, he had this big thing that changed his life. That like was like very a very traumatic sort of way event to him. There was this event that was called the Kanto massacre. It's a thing that happened. There was like a huge earthquake in the region of Kanto, and like 100,000 people died on that earthquake. And right after the earthquake, a lot of news started spreading around, saying that the Korean immigrants were going to use the chaos of the earthquake to try to take over the country. So uh, because of this like fake news that was going around, a lot of people on the army, right wing militias and right wing vigilantes, they went on this murder spree in the Kanto region, and they killed over 6,000 people. And people that were like the undesirables at the time, which were Korean immigrants, Chinese immigrants, communists, anarchists, this kind of people. And his brother actually took him, Kurosawa's brother took him to see one of those crime scenes. And he was 13 at the time, and he said that he wanted to look away, and his brother said, "No, you have to see this." And because he saw that, he realized that he should never hide the uncomfortable truths. So that's, I think, was one of the things that he tried really much to apply to his stories and his movies, of showing like the the more gruesome and unpleasant things about the human condition. And he started getting really into movies. He was a particularly big fan of the director John Ford, who was a Western director. He directed like a lot of Charles Bronson movies and stuff like that. And Kurosawa saw those movies and he really enjoyed it. And he thought about a way to applying that medium of storytelling to things that he grew up with. So, being someone from like a samurai family, he turned the cowboy into the samurai, and that's how he started doing his movies. So that's really how, early on, that's how he got with applying those ideas.
Interesting. So he followed the path of other artists in other country, applying that, adapting it to his own reality and about his family as well.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because afterwards the reverse happened. You got to the point where like his movies were literally plagiarized into westerns. Uh, yeah, his movie Yojimbo become the Fistful of Dollars. If you watch Yojimbo and the Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood, they're the same story. And Sergio Leone did say that he was inspired by Yojimbo to make Fistful of Dollars. The Seven Samurai was turned into the Magnificent Seven, which is a cowboy movie with Charles Bronson. So you see a thing that's kind of similar that we see with, you were talking about manga and everything. It was a similar thing that happened with Osamu Tezuka. He was very inspired by American cartoons, especially Disney movies, and then he created the whole manga culture out of that, and now we see the opposite where we in the west are adapting things from manga into our medium. So it's pretty cool to see how like we kind of cannibalize on each other.
Wow, interesting. Very nice, wonderful how this cultural interchange may happen from one flow to other flow. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
it's
this. Um, well, so what is the best and most important message do you think the most important Kurosawa's movies you think they try to pass us like the most famous Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, Rashomon, and others?
uh, I think one of the things that even when he made those big samurai movies, he always tried to make sure the focus was on the human elements. Even if you have like the big samurai fights, he really care about the human element and the human psyche. If you take Rashomon, it's you know the the story of the movie. It's three guys who are sitting on a Rashomon gate, which is those gates that they had in Kyoto in the old times, and they're talking about a murder, like a samurai gun murder. And they start talking, and the guy goes like, "Oh yeah, I heard this happen," and the other guy like, "No, I heard this happen." And then you see like the three people that were involved in the murder, and each one of them tells the same story from a different perspective. And you end up never knowing which one is the real story, because that was the thing that Kurosawa was trying to say, that like for each one of them, even if it's by you're trying to deceive yourself, that's their own reality of what happened, even if they're like very opposite. And that's a thing that I was reading, that like there's this phrase that people asked him once about the themes of his movies, and he said like, I never had a lot of themes in mind. I'm pretty sure like they are there subconsciously, but the only thing that I always kept in mind when I was making those movies was, why can people be happier together? That was the big question that he was. And that's a lot of the things that he came was because of humans' inability to let go of their way of thinking. And you see that in so many of his movies. Like a samurai is going to refuse to do the right thing because he goes against the bushido, or this guy refuses to go this because it's probably like against a cop is gonna do something because it goes against like the law or something like that, because they just refuse, that they are stuck in their ways. And I think that's probably something that him, as someone who grew up on like a samurai family, I'm pretty sure they had like a lot of people in his family that were like very stuck in their ways. And he was really about the idea that like everyone sees the world differently, and if you learn to see the world from the perspective of another person, maybe we can get along a little bit better.
Wow, interesting. So um, you we should think on Kurosawa um, not just in terms of the stereotype of Japan, like samurai stuff, but much beyond on this, on human condition, on human truth. For example,
Yeah.
this idea you expose this seems to be very interesting. Who to whom want to really appreciate art in the way of expressing this human condition.
Yeah,
That's the idea.
yeah, and it's very interesting because when you watch all his movies, he shows, especially for the time, a very sympathetic view of small people, you know, of like uh, farmers, peasants, and stuff like that. Even like in the Seven Samurai, which you have like seven Ronin coming together to defend, like the final message, like the literally the last thing that they say in the movie is like, this was a victory for the peasants. It wasn't the samurai that saved the village. It was the peasants that were willing to stand up for themselves. So he had really interesting thing about that of having this like sympathetic view of of small people. Talking again about Star Wars, I said like George Lucas said that the Hidden Fortress was very inspiration for Star Wars, and he said in an interview that one of the main things is that the Hidden Fortress, you see like this big battle between like daimyos and everything, but the whole story is told from like very like about from like two peasants that decide to fight in the army. And he thought, well, it would be cool if I had this movie that showed like this big intergalactic war, but I show it from the point of like small people. And in his point of view, that's why you have like C3PO and R2D2. They're like these small people. They're not involved in the war, but they're witnessing the events of the war. So that was another inspiration of his. And like said, even like on his movies that you have like samurai, they're usually not like the daimyo, the big bass, most noble samurai. They're usually like ronin and people like that. The like really low kind of samurai. They are the ones that stand up and do the right thing. It's never like the big
Mm,
lord or anything like that. It's
interesting.
uh, it's
Because
it's it's
usually
a, it's a, it's a
people
very
who are
interesting
foreign,
thing.
uh, usually people like us, yeah, Gai Kokujin, Gaijin, who are not so much used to Japanese culture. Um, Samurai is a all-powerful entity, yeah.
Yeah.
But in fact, we had as a range of samurais with since low rank to very high rank, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, he's always had like this really interesting view of that. There's another movie of him called uh, let's see, uh, trying to remember the name in English. High and Low. It's Tengoku to Jigoku, which will be
Mm,
Heaven and Hell. And
yeah.
this is a very interesting movie of his because it's not a samurai movie. It takes place in post-war Japan, and there's this guy who is the CEO of a company, and he is he's not happy with the way the company is going, and he decides to do this like big takeover of the company. He's like, I'm gonna take over the company, and then I'm gonna be able to put it back on track. So he gathers all his money, all his wealth. He mortgages his house, and he's prepared to do this takeover of the company. But as he is about to do that, he receives a phone call telling him that his son has been kidnapped and that he's going to have to pay for the ransom, and that's all the money that he has put together to be able to take over the company. But then he finds out that was not his kid that was kidnapped. It was his chauffeur's child that got kidnapped. The kidnappers got wrong. Like his son was playing with the chauffeur's child, and they kidnapped the poor boy instead of the rich boy. So he has this big, moral decision that he's going to have to make. Do I save this child and then destroy basically my whole like career? And it's interesting because he shows like this very sympathetic version you know, the people that, the collateral damage of the small people that got involved with this situation. So it's another one of his more famous movies that it's also very very interesting.
Wow, very nice. I love your discussion. You are we are discussing very delicate, sensitive subjects, and I had no idea about this. So, um, but how to compete with nowadays movies, this kind of production? Do you think the the people of this century, 2023 year, uh, these people may enjoy this kind of movies by Akira Kurosawa?
I think you can. I mean, I mean, you have to put yourself in the right mindset. I think that's the thing about most old movies. Like, even if you're gonna watch like Citizen Kane, that everyone says like, oh, it's the greatest movie of all time, it can be a pretty slow movie. So, like a lot of movies, you have to be like in the right mindset. Uh, and like I said, I think like Kurosawa movies, like some of them can be kind of slow, but a lot of them, like the Seven Samurai, is from 1954, so it's like what, 90 years old now. 90 80 years old, 80 years old, 70 years old. So it's like still great action. Like the sword fights are like really really good. They're really good sword fights, and that's from a movie that's like 70 years old. Because I guess it's because he had like good like people who knew how to use the swords and everything. So they can be really enjoyable, the fight scenes. Of course, they have this low moments and everything,
Interesting.
but like, really, if you watch like the Seven Samurai, you don't look like, oh man. Especially, it's not like when you look like, other movies from like the 50s, like where like, oh man, that fight scene is so lame. Like the monsters look bad, and the action, it's still really good action. So that can be pretty fun to watch. Um, a lot of the stuff that like you see in modern movies, especially modern samurai movies, they were established on his movies. Um, take I'm not sure if it was in Yojimbo or the sequel Sanjuro that there was this scene in the movie that the main samurai is going to fight the bad guy, and they stand like really close to each other and they prepare and they do like that classic with the sword, and but like the good guy is faster, so he cuts the guy up. And that was the first scene where you have like the thing that I was like cliche for samurai movies, where like the blood like just like gushes, like if it was like out of a out of a hose or something, like just like a lot of blood. And that was an accident when they were making the movie. The guy had like a hose inside of his clothes that was supposed to like squish the blood, but like the thing that connected the control the pressure broke, so it just like squished a lot of blood. And Kurosawa was like, "Ah, yeah, that looks really cool. So let's keep as, as it was by accident." And then that became like a thing that you see like in if you see Kill Bill, when she cuts the guy's arm and she goes like, "Ah," the blood gushing out and everything. That came from a Kurosawa movie by an accident in one of
Wow.
his movies. So it's really cool to see a lot of those things. Like, you look like, oh, so that they were doing all the things that you see like in anime and modern movies, and that this guy was doing that in the 50s and the 60s.
Mm, interesting. Uh, I more recently, it got a boom in our uh, nowadays culture about the American drama Cobra Kai. Yeah, I don't know if you have watched this series. I loved it, and it's a sequence to the very popular in maybe
Karate Kid,
19, ni- ni- 19, uh,
80s.
1990 years, maybe Karate Kid. Yeah,
I think it's from the 80s.
sequences. 80s, yeah, well, maybe 80s.
Yeah,
Wow, yeah. So movies from how many years ago? 4 decades ago, maybe.
yeah,
Maybe 4 decades ago. Yeah, 40 years ago. So it was very interesting to check how the look like these characters and also the same actors. It was very very interesting. I think this
yeah,
was first time in the movies. But and also it's very interesting because it's very related to Japanese culture as well and tradition. Yeah, because it's American, but even all with the Miyagi Sensei um, um, doctrine, teachings, and the Okinawa, everything. Yeah. Um, but
that's actually you're talking about Miyagi. That's actually another big theme on Kurosawa movies of having the figure of a mentor. He really liked the idea of the figure of the mentor, of like having a
mm,
a character, a samurai, and then he meets another samurai that teaches him like like about stuff. There's a movie called Red Beard. It's another Kurosawa movie called Red Beard, and it's about this guy who is training to become a doctor, and he wants to be like the main doctor of the shogunate and everything. And he's sent to be an apprentice to this like small town doctor, and he doesn't like it because like I wanted to be like the doctor of the shogun, and they're sending me to work with this guy who like cures peasants. And then he learns how to appreciate this guy, the how wise he's by doing his work with in a small village and stuff like that. So
mm,
he always
interesting.
really enjoyed this idea of having like an older mentor figure, and you see that in a lot of his movies.
Nice. Well, what I was trying to compare as well, but this comparison is also very precious, as about the performance simulating real fights. Yeah. Um, although Cobra Kai is very interesting for this idea, very innovative idea of it picking what the characters and the actors of the original movies would look like um, uh, 40 years later. But I heard many critics about the poor way of performing the fight scenes. Yeah, I don't know if you agree with this, but you think this was opposite in the case of Kurosawa's movies. They were very well performed.
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages of making your movies in Japan. You have access to people that actually knew how to practice the art. Um, yeah, even like Kurosawa's first movie was a movie called Sugata Sanshiro, and it's a movie about a jiu-jitsu fighter. So that was a thing that was like his first movie, and it was like an immediate success. Apparently, the character of Sugata Sanshiro became somewhat of like a cultural icon in Japan. I guess like his movies are like sequels and remakes. I guess he's kind of like maybe the Japanese version of Rocky or something. And he gets there are parodies of him and everything. So that was a big thing for Kurosawa from the start, having the display the martial arts on his movies. I guess.
Wow, interesting. Well, we we are already finishing our transmission now. About 40 minutes of a conversation, interview. Very impressive. Your experience and knowledge about this myth of a Japanese um, artist, yeah, Kurosawa. It stimulates me also to look more into it and try to move to watch some of his movies and try to break my own prejudice about old movies, black and white.
Yeah.
Um, and, to finish this interview, maybe the last question. Maybe, of course, you may comment something more, if you please, as well. But my last idea is comparing to Brazilian movies, yeah, and also to your own work as artist, yeah. Um, so you said that Kurosawa inspired into other movies, tradition, and history, like creating like a legacy about his family of the samurai and things like that. Do you think Brazilians also have something like legacy to inspire as well? Because I think usually Brazilians don't like to appreciate much our own history. Yeah, uh, of course it's not so long. Considering just Western civilization coming from Europe. And of course, we have indigenous civilizations, tribes, and so many languages before the coming of Portuguese and other European people to Brazil, yeah, 500 years ago. And anyway, every country has its own precious and interesting history to study, to make stories about. Yeah. So please, that's my idea of final question to discuss. And also, you may compare about your own artist work as well in any way.
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing because it's in I'm also a sucker for like you know European history. There's something very flashy in like in our imaginary about like you know uh, knights with swords and stuff like that. And then like again the samurai. It's very flashy and very inspiring. Like I grew up with you know me well. Like I'm huge fan of Tolkien, and there's no way you cannot talk about Tolkien not being inspired by like European history and all of that. And I think that it's a tough thing for us, as Brazilians to find a way to be inspired, by that kind of romantic idea, mostly because you either have the indigenous people that are, they had amazing culture, but it was not like as flashy as you would expect from like big battles or anything like that, or you have people that did do battle in Brazil that were terrible people, you know, the bandeirantes, like they were like explorers, and they also murder a lot of innocent people. So it's really hard for us to find something like that to latch on as our inspiration. It's a big coincidence that you were talking about that, because just today I was reading about these guys who were making uh, a setting for Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop role playing games that is based in South American culture. So maybe that's a way that you can find a way to embrace a little bit of like the magic and the fighting with our elements, because otherwise, yeah, it's really hard for us sometimes to get that kind of
Hmm.
inspiration. There are a lot of great things you can get from like indigenous culture and stuff like that. But it's hard to find something that inspires the same way as you have with samurai and knights and everything. So I can see the struggle that it is. Um,
Hmm.
and
Something I
also
need to
maybe they,
remember
they even
now.
had some stuff like that, but it was so wiped out that we don't even know.
Yeah, something I remember now, maybe in some way relating to this, is a Brazilian series in Netflix that's not very related to Brazilian real history, but Brazilian mythology, folklore, um, and it gets very worldwide appreciated as well. I don't remember now the name. Let me see. But that talks about very renowned myths in Brazil, like Saci and Curupira, Boitatá, and others in Rio de Janeiro and Amazonia as well, Amazon. Uh, in a way that before that movie, before that Netflix series, I always considered just like something like childish, maybe, but they reinterpreted this in a very adult way, in a very wow. I do you know this series? I don't remember now the name. Um, Invisible
I mean,
City. Yeah.
I guess you can even say that Tolkien did the same thing, because like before Tolkien, elves were like Santa elves. They were like small creatures, nature spirits and everything. And Tolkien turned elves in how we think about as elves, as like warriors, with they have like elegant armor and stuff. So I guess in a kind of way, he also had to do that, taking uh, what would be like more childlike folklore and turn into something that was a bit more mature or something.
Yeah, I found the name of the creator of the series, Carlos Saldanha. Yeah,
Mhm.
Brazilian Invisible City, in Portuguese Cidade Invisível, Brazilian fantasy streaming television series created by Carlos Saldanha. Yeah, also based on a story co-developed by the screenwriter and best-selling authors Rafael Dracon and Carolina Munoz. Wow. And by the
Yeah,
way, I have it here, for instance, a script writing book. It's difficult to see because of my yeah, no difficult.
yeah,
Let me try to take out this. I don't know how to do this. Yeah, virtual background. Let me see. No, yeah, Bernard. I don't know. Yeah, this one. The script writing by Michael Stravinsky. I don't know if you know this author, but
no,
uh, years ago I was very into this kind of stuff, um, and even I started a postgraduate course um, in Senac. That's very important school in Brazil about script writing, and this is one of the main books I found. The complete book of the script writing by Michael Straczynski. Yeah, I recommend.
yeah.
So
So that is actually he's very famous in my area. He was a lot involved in like in 3D animation and all of that. So he's a guy who's you know I think he was lucky to have like the right contacts and to be able to then uh, you know expose the rest of the world of the for our culture and stuff like that. And I think it's
sorry,
good.
who? Who you're
Saldanha,
talking about? Huh?
Saldanha,
Saldanha. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very
So
well. Yeah. We are very we
mm,
appreciate a lot his work, and of course he
yeah,
was lucky, but also very brave and uh, to go till this point.
yeah.
um, Good. So
Uh,
just to finish about your own work, your professional and artist work, how this Kurosawa inspired you, maybe or not.
it's difficult to say how. I mean, he's just one of the greatest movie directors. His cinematography is beautiful, and I think I cannot point like, oh, I was directly inspired by him on this or that, but he's probably part of the portfolio of inspirations that I have when I do something. Um, there's this channel, now defunct channel on YouTube called Every Frame a Painting, and they talk a lot about movies, how like in a good movie every single frame gonna looks like a painting. And I think that's very much how you take when you have a great cinematographer. He can inspire art that's beyond just what they do. We were talking about the influence of Kurosawa. Like in the late '60s, He tried to go to Hollywood. That he was working on a movie. The whole thing fell apart. Was really bad. And throughout the 70s, he had a lot of trouble getting money to make his next movies. And that's when like guys who were like becoming the new big names of cinema uh, came out and decided to help him. George Lucas was one. Francis Ford Coppola from The Godfather was another. They decided like we are going to help finance the movies because you were such a big inspiration for us. Uh, in the 90s, when he made one of his last movies, Dreams, Spielberg was the one that produced the movie because that's how big he was of an influence on those guys. And I think he's even now he's getting a little bit of a resurgence. Recently, there were two video games that came out, Ghost of Tsushima and Trek to Yomi. They're not Japanese made. They're made by like Western studios, and they're just so inspired by his movies. Track to Yomi, it's a black and white game. Uses so much of like his techniques. The same thing goes with Tsushima. It even allows you like it has like the Kurosawa mode on the game. They could turn the game into black and white with like high contrast between light and shadow and everything. So you can play a video game like one of his movies. So even all those years later, he's still like incredibly influential to so many artists, even outside of Japan.
Very interesting. Okay. So, well, it was almost a 1 hour of a discussion on this very artistic and a human issue about Japan. I love, I appreciate a lot your time. Forgiving me about the delay, also to start the transmission on technical issues and the organization to promote. But I hope it worked well for you. Um, I hope now we have this document, this multimedia document, to as a legacy about this work that I suppose you also appreciate a lot.
Yeah,
So we may use this to share to anyone who are into this kind of work. And also, I'd like you to comment about your own professional 3D work. And I don't know very well what this non-manifold means. If you could explain us, please.
okay, yeah. So like I said, I'm a 3D artist. I do mostly 3D models for stuff. I did a lot of work for television. Doing what we call previs, which is you make like a set for a TV show in 3D to show to the director, and then later they're going to actually build the set in real life. So I did a lot of work like that. So you can find my work on my Instagram right here, and I also have like an art station and my own professional website, uh, georgeluz.art, art, where you can find some of my 3D work. And asking what is non-manifold geo. So it's non-manifold geometry, which is a thing that is from mathematics, which are geometry that are impossible to exist in real life. So, for example, you have an edge and it has three sides attached to it. That's something that's impossible to exist in real life. And the reason that's my name because when you work as a 3D artist, if you mess up the 3D model you're doing, you're gonna get an error that says you have non-manifold geometry because it's something that is impossible to be rendered. So it's kind of an inside joke of a lot of
Okay.
anyone who works on 3D has seen that error before. So that's where the name comes from.
Okay. Nice. Thank you for explaining. Okay, that's it for today. I hope our viewers appreciate our work today, and I appreciate a lot our special guest, Jorge Luz. All success for you, and
Thank you.
uh, on personal, professional, and cultural matters. And of course, for all our viewers as well.
Thank you so much.
So that's it for today. Bye bye. And ganbatte kudasai. All efforts and good luck for all of you. Bye bye.